have a look at this. So if I click that, there we go. Can you all see that all right? Yeah. It's not. It's not backwards, upside down, or something crazy.
I'm just trying to figure out how to make it bigger.
Yeah. So if you actually click the window, it should. It should go to full screen. It should go to a full screen and put everyone else to one side. And I think Aaron did say you can sort of.
If you double tap it, think on the phone, it should do it.
Yeah,
Okie dokie. So I wanted to go over oil pin washes today. Hopefully it won't take up too much of your time. I've got a couple of models going round on here that I've actually used this technique on. One of which is the Tau guys. So they've been a very quick, rough and ready blast with the airbrush, a bit weathering with a sponge, and then I've used this oil pin wash to sort of define the lines and pick out the armour. Works very well on Tau models and Space Marine models, things that have got clear lines on them. It probably works better on those than perhaps your more organic models. Don't use this technique for things like Tyranids or anything like that. So I'm just wondering if I can pick these up, whether you'll get a better picture under the marginally. So I'm assuming, I mean, you're all pretty reasonable painters in your own right, looking at the names in the channel. So I don't really want to be teaching you all to suck eggs, but I'm assuming, just for the sake of it, I'm just going to say, you know, the paints we use for from Games Workshop, they're acrylic paints, water based, and what we'll be using for this technique is an oil based paint. So there's a couple of important things we need to remember when we're working with oil-based paints. The first of which is, obviously, we need to make sure we seal the miniature before we start applying the oil wash. The other important thing to remember is what we actually thin the oil paints with, and I'll talk about that as we go through today. So I thought what we'd do, I'll tell you a bit about what it is, how I've used it. I'll show you some of the products that I use. So I've got here some Georgian oil colour paints. Somebody already mentioned earlier that the shop at Hobbycraft, which is exactly where I'd got this from. This is some Winsor & Newton artisan and paints. Again, it's just a black. It's an oil colour. It says on here. That's what we're looking for. The oil, that it's oil colour. So the Tau guys that I paint, and that's what I've got prepared for us to do a quick demo on this. I use the Van Dyke Brown. The reason behind that, I wanted to accentuate the dirty, grimy, muddy sort of effect that I was looking for with that particular colour scheme. That doesn't mean to say you can't use other colours. I've also used the black in the past, and I've used that on more sort of like Space Marines. I think I used them on an Ultramarine job I did not so long ago. It created, against the blues, it created quite a cartoony sort of look, which was interesting if that's the sort of thing you want to go with. Again, the Imperial Fists, I use the Van Dyke Brown. I like it. It's not black, but it's dark enough to create the shadow and the effect that I was looking for. The other colour I've not actually used yet, but I'm looking for a sort of dark blue oil-based paint, and again I'm going to use that on Grey Knights. So I have a Grey Knight army sitting in my little cupboard of shame, waiting for some attention. Plan to spray them and do a blue oil wash, and that'll create like a blue hue to the silver, which I think will look quite effective. But more on that on the future. So that's a little bit about the type of oils that we're using. Probably one of the most critical stages is sealing the miniature. So I'm sure we are all familiar with Purity Seal from Citadel. It's a nice, easy, no fuss way of sealing the miniature. Now the Purity Seal does have a satin finish, and again I'll talk about that in a few minutes. I've also got here, just to show you, some matte varnishes and a gloss varnish, and these I can blur through the airbrush and give a good coat as well. So in true Blue Peter form, here's one I've prepared earlier. So this little guy, he's had his colours applied, and I've finished picking out any detail that I'm going to pick out. And as far as applying colour to the model, I'm about as far as I'm going to go with this particular piece. So the next stage then is, now I opted for a Purity Seal spray on this, and that's a satin finish. Now that is pure laziness on my part, if I'm honest. That's really because I'm really trying to save myself a stage later down the line. When you're using oil washes, I think the best course of action would be a gloss varnish, because you get a nice shiny surface, you've got a reduced surface tension, and you get that capillary action working really easy, drawing that paint into all the little lines and the nooks and crannies. But you end up with a really shiny model at the end, and you end up going back with either a satin varnish over the top, or you can flatten it off with a matte varnish. It doesn't have to stay shiny. I'm just trying to be lazy, really, in just using the Purity Seal and getting away with that. So that's sealing the model. Some of the other tools I use, I bought a bunch of these off eBay, nice and cheap. They're just a little plastic tub, which I use for mixing stuff in. I trip to B&Q, and I'm using something called Clean Spirit. It's a white spirit. It's an odorless version. So if you're looking for white spirits, do yourself a favour and stick to the odorless stuff, because if you get the standard stuff, you'll stink the house out and you'll upset the wife, and we all know what happens then. Some people use turpentine and oil-based stuff, which you get from specialist oil thinners that you can get from Hobbycraft. There's nothing wrong with using those. I just think, you know, white spirit's nice and cheap, and it does the same job. Just another note on thinners. Some of you that have done stuff with pigments in the past may have isopropyl alcohol on hand. I don't recommend using that to thin the oil paints, because it tends to make it all clumpy, and it just doesn't work. So I will try now to show you the effect what I go for. So I just use my tub and I just put a little splodge in the bottom of the tub. I have one of these little squirty bottles. It's preloaded with a bit of white spirit, and I'm just squirt that in there. So I have two brushes for this process. One just to mix it all up, and then I'm using an old Citadel one. I think this one is. You don't need an amazing brush to do this. It's not working very well. The quickest way to knacker your brushes up is using it for this. So use a bit more. So don't use your best brushes. You can probably your cheaper synthetic brushes that you can get will probably do the job better. No, I haven't used this paint for a while, so I'm just having a bit of a hard time getting this to mix down, which is a little bit embarrassing. Sorry about that, guys. So it's just a bit lumpy. I'm just going to take that off and take some of that out. Let's see if we can't get it to play ball a little bit. So I've had this paint sitting in my cupboard probably for the last 2 years or so, and it's just trying to show me up a little bit. I think we'll just try something here a bit different. What we got here? So this is generally a lot quicker. But I think I've maybe switched me white spirit, and that's maybe having a bit of an effect on it. That's going to irritate me, is that? So sorry about this, guys. I should have checked this before I started the stream. But I'm sure you can see what I'm talking about. You see how it's going lumpy instead of breaking the paint down. So so that's the problem I'm having, and it's either the new bottle of white spirit I'm using, or it's the paints may be a bit old. So I'll just try something a little bit different. I've got an old bottle in there what I used. That's better. That's better. So the odorless clean spirit was what was causing me my problem there. So that's I would maybe stick to stuff that specifically designates white spirit. So I've actually just learnt something there. So you can see, hopefully see how it's now broken that down to a paste, and we're still quite runny, and we're just trying to mix that paint up so it's nice and runny. So there we go. Alright, so I'm a bit happy with that. So you can see it's not quite the consistency of water, but it's just a little bit more fluid than what you would normally put through your airbrush. So you see it's still quite liquid, quite fluid, a bit like a wash. Should behave like a wash. So, and then it's pretty much, once you're at that stage, it's a straightforward. So I like to rub the brush on the bottom of it, test it on the side. So, and hopefully if I'm holding this in the right place, you can see when I dot it on, so we've got this capillary action, just pulling it through all the cracks. So you can get it quite thick, and thanks to the application of the satin varnish, we can afford to be a little bit messy with it. Not too bad, because you know, if you go to town blathering it all over, then you've just got more time spent on cleanup. But you can just, you see it runs into all the cracks, nice and easy. What I have done in the past, when I've been doing Imperial Knights, so anyone that's built that Imperial Knight kit will know that you sort of construct your exoskeleton first, and then you put your armor plates on afterwards. And I actually mixed an oil wash and blew the oil wash through an airbrush. and I think I found that on a YouTube video from a guy called By Painted. You should check his YouTube channel out because he uses this oil wash technique to great effect, quite a lot. And with the exoskeleton, I airbrushed it all silver, and then I mixed up the oil wash, much the same as what we've just done here, and blew it through the airbrush onto the silver, which was quite a messy job, but it went on very quickly, because you can imagine doing this on something as big as an Imperial Knight would take quite a while. And then the cleanup stage was done was done with one of those little yellow duster cloths, and sort of rubbed the oil filter, he called it, off the silver. So again, achieving that same effect of having your oil wash in the shadows and the nice shiny bits of silver on the top, which was kind of cool. Oh, I thought it was. But you see, certainly for panel lining, this is a win in my book. I didn't actually look to see when I started what the time was, but I can't imagine we've been going for very long, and we're already, I would have said, 50% of the way through applying this. So it really is, you know, as opposed to trying to panel line it with a paintbrush, which would take quite a while. We'll do this. We'll do it. Any of you guys worked with oil paints before? No. Yeah, it is a little different, but yeah, and you can see. I'm hoping you can see that I'm actually been quite messy with it. I'm not really been too particular about where I'm putting it. You see there where I've just blodged too much on. Normally if that was normal paint, you'd be having a meltdown now, but if I just dab my brush and clean it off, and then I can just go back again and just pick it up, and you're just left there with a little bit of staining. But I'm not too worried about that either, because once we've done this, there's a cleanup stage, which I'll show you, and we just go around. We'll go around the model with a Q-tip and a little bit of the white spirit on the Q-tip, and just gently rub where we've got some of this staining, and it should bring it out without too much trouble. The biggest thing to remember with that is not to rub too hard, because we are still using white spirit, and it will, if you rub hard, it will penetrate some of that varnish that we've put on earlier on, and if it does that, then we are in a bit of a sticky situation, because the white spirit will bring your water-based acrylic paints off in a heartbeat. So we would need then to start again. So again, hopefully you're just sort of getting the impression how quick how much quicker this could be when it comes to painting armies. It's and again, I can't recommend that by Painted. His YouTube channel is enough, really. When I first started airbrushing a few years ago, it was his videos that I found when I was looking for guidance, and he used this painting technique to great effect. I believe he was a commission painter, so there was quite a variety of models that he used that on. So if I just flip this guy over, I'm now wishing that I'd picked one of the Barracudas instead, and that it would have been a bit quicker to have shown you all. But you can see, hopefully you can see. It's quite good stuff. It's quite good stuff, is this? If you sit it to one side, you can leave it, go and do something else, come back again, and the mixture that you've made up, if it's a little bit dry, you can sort of reactivate it with a bit of the white spirit, and it'll comes back to life and carry on doing what you were doing. What I would suggest is I wouldn't walk away and leave the model uncleaned. So the cleanup stage, which we'll get to in a few minutes once I've finished going round here, that cleanup stage, the longer you leave it, the harder it becomes, and the harder it becomes, the more chance you have of damaging that layer of purity seal underneath and damaging the original paint job. Again, you can see these lots of little details on these Aeronautica minis. Once again, it's another gaming system that I was never going to get involved with until they brought out some Tau models, and then it just, like everything, sucks you in. I'm sure you all know what I'm talking about. So, you can see I'm actually being quite even more messy than I usually am. Just try and speed it up a bit for you. There we are. And with this, with it being this brown rather than a harsh black, it really just does lend itself to this sort of mucky, grimy effect that I've been looking to achieve with this army. Hopefully, I think I've got it all. Unless you guys can see any bits I've missed.
Yeah, top left.
Yeah.
try and help a guy out, and he just brings it up every time.
Right, there we go. So that's it. I'm going to say that stage is done. So there's pointless trying to wash your brush in white spirit in water. Remember, we're dealing with oil paints, so I'll just bring that into view so you can see, you can sort of see what I'm doing. I've just squirted a bit of my white spirit into there and just rolling my brush around, so I can try and maintain some semblance of a point, even though you don't really need it too much for this technique. But I would, keep one brush for doing that. Once I bring that back into view, so what I'll do now, I'm just going to put a bit of this clean white spirit into one of me. There we go. Try and not to spill it all over the desk like I've just done. But put it in there, and then I'm going to use nothing fancy, just a couple of Q-tips. He says nothing fancy, just a couple of Q-tips. Dab it in, dab off the excess, so you've got just the head of that is just nice, it's not dripping, wringing water out, and you can see straight away that it starts to bring off. I'm hoping you can see it on the webcam, that it brings off that excess.
Yeah.
It's certainly where I've been quite messy on this middle section. So all I'm doing is just gently pulling it across the top, and you can see the centre fuselage now starts to whiten up, and leaves and as long as you don't get it the Q-tip too wet, it'll leave the oil wash in the recess. So, and again, you see on this leaf where you've got that staining, it just comes straight off, cleans it up, and all of a sudden you can see that starts to look something like, once your Q-tip gets a bit mucky, I'd just switch to the other end. Otherwise, you just end up pushing the mucky bit about, and that's not what we want. So that just goes through. You can do, but I have had it where been called away in emergency, and I've sort of left it so that go and deal with whatever, and I've come back and some of it's dried, and these stains, you can see they hardly take any removing at the moment, but once they've dried, they take a lot more, and they're a lot harder to remove, and you really do run the risk of damaging the paintwork underneath. You see that was a little tough to come off there. So I would certainly, if you're painting something a lot larger, I would consider painting in sections, or if you're scaling it up to say something like Knight size or Titan sized, I'd look at again sectioning it, but like I mentioned earlier, you can probably get away with using like a bit of cloth rather than just a Q-tip, you know, and then you can effectively clean more surface area a lot faster. So yeah, I'm quite I quite like this technique. Certainly for tau, you know, you've got loads of panel lines on tau. Space Marines is effective. It's quite good. You know, you use it on Aquilas. Works well on metallic colours. It's very effective on those. So if your bronzes, your golds. You know, then also the surface tension's always a lot less on metallic surfaces anyway, so it works quite well there. But again, I'm not too worried about being too tidy. You know that again, the whole colour scheme for this particular arm is quite grimy and dirty anyway, so if some of it doesn't clean up as well as I'd hoped, I ain't gonna obsess about it, if I'm honest. But if you were doing something where it was paramount that you created a clear definition and you wanted it crystal clean, this technique will still work just as well. You just have to be a little more patient and persevere with it just that little bit more. So now I've gone over and cleaned up, I can see a few areas I've missed, so I'm just going to pick my brush back up again, and I go back to my liquid again. When I go to this pot, I'm really pushing the bristles of the brush against the bottom of the beaker there, and then drawing it through the white spirit. Because obviously the paint's heavier than the white spirit, it will sink to the bottom. So it's just to keep that colour and that pigment in there on that brush, so that it can do its thing. You know, now the bulk of it's done, I can see any bits I've missed, go back over those, and it's relatively, you know, it's relatively straightforward. So there's not a great deal to it. The hardest part, I would say, is making sure you got the right products to mix. As we've just learnt from this video, not all white spirit is created equal. And a product I've used in the past is no longer working, so that's certainly one for me to learn. Well, that's basically that, gentlemen. It's that's our technique. I'm hoping you all saw that. I didn't hide too much of it with my hands.
No, not at all. No, it's very effective though, isn't it?
You know, it's a great technique. It's even better when you use it in conjunction with standard painting techniques. It's not limited to airbrush. Just because I've used it on models that have been airbrushed doesn't mean you can't hand paint a model just the same. It can be used anywhere like that, and I just think it's a real fast, quick, easy way to get some definition on a model, get it tabletop standard, and to the passerby, it looks like you've spent hours painstakingly blacklining all those little lines in. So, it's a real good technique in my book. Is that one?
Yeah.
We've seen. I don't know if you can see this guy. This guy on his shoulder. He has the Aquila was painted in brass. We used the same technique on those. The cables on the back they're silver. They just rubbed the oil wash, and the capillary action took it into all the lines, and it does a lot of the work. A lot of the work for us, creates a dry brushing effect without really dry brushing. So, for those tight spaces, again, it can be quite useful. You could with white spirit, you can always reactivate the oil paint on the model itself. So if you decided you didn't like that colour and you wanted to peel it off, again using the white spirit with a bit of effort, you can go in and take it out and reline it with a different colour until the point you wanted to reseal the model again. I know some of you guys that do a lot of gaming, you like to purity seal your miniatures before you go to events, especially metal ones. Yeah, I think that's really all I've got to say on oil pin washing for now, unless you guys have got any questions.
Was that the Manta from Titanic? The Aeronauticus?
Yes, it's not the Manta. It's the it's not the Barracuda. The Barracuda's the fighter, and then it's is it Tiger Shark? Tiger Shark. Tiger Shark, I think they call it. I've got the instruction book kicking around.
Just quite tell from the scale.
Yeah, it's the Aeronautica scale. I have done larger models with the same technique. You can see there's what do they call them? Piranha. Thank you. My meltdown. There's a piranha there, painted with the same, just the same technique, the same way. I actually painted that in sections, built the models, airbrushed it all up, did everything. I did the cockpit in one sitting, and I did the wings and the fuselage in another sitting, just purely to spread it out a bit. Again, slightly larger model on there. Again, use the same colour scheme, same technique. You get the grimy, dirty look because of the browns, and you've chosen not to clean it up in certain areas, but you still get that definition in the lines. So hopefully you'll see it could be a really useful technique, and it requires a very little effort and very little skill to pull off. Just know a few little tricks and you're away with it. Any other questions?
No, man, it's been impressive. It's informative. Awesome. I have to look into that, definitely.
So yeah. Well, if anyone has any questions, just shoot us a message in Discord. Happy to answer anything. If everyone's enjoyed what they've done today, I'm quite happy to do a few more. could perhaps do some on airbrush setup and some basic airbrush techniques if there was enough interest, people wanted that sort of thing. So
no, yeah, Guy, it's been great, mate. Thank you very much for doing it. I hope you've enjoyed it. I mean, I have.
Yeah, thanks. Good picking up a few new techniques from coming back into it after so long.
Sounds like I watch models be finished.
Right, excellent. Okay then, guys. Well, I'm going to sign off for a bit. I've tried to record it, so I'll have a look back through the recording and put it in the channel for anybody that's missed it, and I'll have a think. I'll have a think about something for next week.
You can, if you want to, just put it in the suggestions tab what people wanted.
Yeah, happy to do that. Yeah, happy to do that, providing my skill set can stretch to it. Yeah.
I'm sure you'll be fine.
Yeah, definitely. You know, I've certainly done my fair share of airbrushing. I think I could potentially contribute there. So that might be quite good. If we've got anybody that is experienced doing non-metallic metal paint jobs, I would be very interested to see what they're doing. That's something I'm currently trying to learn at the moment from YouTube videos and friends and that sort of thing. It's certainly something I am a long way off mastering.
I'll pin my message, and mate, he used to do commission painting. I think he's done a fair bit.
Yeah, so, I mean, it would be great. It would be great to see. Certainly see some other painters sharing some tips and tricks as well. That would be fantastic.
Yeah, it's been good.
Excellent.
Yeah, just that.
All right. Yeah. Thanks very much, guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Cheers. Bye.